There is a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie out on Netflix, and it's the perfect time to go back and look over this wild, crazy, very inconsistent horror franchise. So let's rank the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies from worst to best.
Clean this shit up.
At the very bottom of the list is Texas Chainsaw 3D. You know who would be a good anti-hero? Leatherface. Said no one ever. Let's make Leatherface and his family the victims. Yeah, these violent, horrible criminals who slash people up and eat them. We love them. That's what this movie does. It is such a bizarre approach, and it shows that this franchise is really at the end of its rope. When you've got to engineer Leatherface and his family to be the good guys, misunderstood by the corrupt police in the town, and everything's against them, and that's why they ended up slashing and dicing and killing hundreds of people. And it makes no sense, because throughout this film Leatherface is chasing this woman who then decides, after he's been trying to kill her for the whole film, that she's gonna throw the bat onto him.
That's right. Do your thing, cuz.
The whole film falls apart because of that. You know, the whole idea comes from a terrible place. Like, it's just a really, really bad idea delivered really badly. No menace to Leatherface in this. He looks terrible. It's the worst mask in the entire series. There's barely any suspense. There's barely any tension. And just the whole underlying theme and ideas in this just have you uninterested from the get-go. It doesn't work. It's not the right franchise to do this with. Texas Chainsaw 3D really did suck.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Next on the list is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Yes, I wasn't a fan of this new Texas Chainsaw movie. I did think it was a load of old arse. This movie is a course in how not to write movie characters. These characters are unlikable little shits. Now, I lean on the left of the political spectrum on most things. So do these kids, and I found these kids infuriating. They're basically hardcore left-wing activists who go to this ghost town and go, right, everything should be how we want. We're going to recreate this entire ghost town, and we're going to chuck this lady out because she's living here and she's in our way. These characters are really unlikable, and again, it's an attempt to kind of paint Leatherface as sympathetic, because lo and behold, Leatherface has been hiding out in this ghost town, being looked after by this woman for many, many years. And then she gets thrown out, he gets agitated, and he goes after these kids. And you do end up asking the question, what's Leatherface been doing for 50 bloody years? Sitting there playing solitaire, while this woman now and again brings in food. How's he been in this house for 50 years? That also goes against everything we know in the franchise. This franchise really does have a habit of just writing things over and forgetting things, and none of it fits together at all. So we brought back Sally from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original survivor. We bring her back in this film 50 years later. Sally was pointless, and she was a Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills ripoff. She's a Laurie Strode ripoff. Why? Because this character is obsessed with what Leatherface thinks of her. She's obsessed with this confrontation. She's waiting for this confrontation with Leatherface. There's even a moment in this which might be the most cringy moment in the entire franchise, and that's saying a lot, considering the shite this franchise has in it. She comes face to face with Leatherface and she's like, do you remember me? No, love. He's got the brain of a cheese sandwich. He doesn't remember what he did yesterday. What are you talking about? Why does it matter to you that he remembers you? Just kill the fucker. But it's just trying to have that Michael Myers cake and eat it thing. And it's like, Leatherface is not the same character as Michael Myers. This isn't the same thing. This isn't the same legacy. So to just blatantly rip that off was infuriating. There's no atmosphere in this ghost town. If you're gonna set a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie in a ghost town, you might actually be able to capture some of that isolation and nightmare feeling of the first movie. No, you don't. That's a real problem with this film, and I haven't really seen many people talk about it. That's one of my major problems. You don't feel like it's a ghost town. If it was a ghost town, you could have Leatherface around any corner, bursting out of anywhere, catching you anywhere. Doesn't really happen in this. It doesn't feel like a ghost town at all. It doesn't feel enclosed. It doesn't feel claustrophobic. Yes, there is massacre moments, there is gore, there's that cringy, awful scene on the bus where Leatherface gets on and they threaten to cancel him. Yeah, Leatherface really cares what Instagram, Twitter and the media think of him. He hasn't even been out of a house in 50 years, mate. You're not going to threaten him with that. Use that chainsaw on me and you'll be cancelled. No, you'll be cancelled, son. You'll be in the ground. Also, how old is Leatherface? This is 50 years after the original. The man's about 70. Now, Michael Myers is also pushing 70. So I think they should do a grumpy old men film with Michael Myers and Leatherface. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Grumpy old sods.
I wish this was just normal. I wish we were just two people here at a diner, you know. I wish I was somebody else.
Next up on the list is 2017's Leatherface. Back in 2017, this movie went completely under the radar. In fact, it didn't even get to the radar. No one cared. No one remotely cared about this movie. You know, I didn't even know this came out. This film reminds me of those Hellraiser sequels where basically what used to happen with some of the Hellraiser sequels is they'd hijack a script and force Pinhead into it for a laugh because they need to make another Hellraiser sequel. That's exactly what they did here. I choose to believe that. I really feel like this was just a terrible, rubbish, insane asylum movie and then they tacked Leatherface onto it. This isn't the right franchise to do this with. This isn't the right character to do this kind of idea with. Set in this insane asylum, you're supposed to guess who Leatherface is. It's supposed to be about nature versus nurture and why people are how they are. It's supposed to be you never can predict how people are, all that kind of stuff. But it's written badly. It's written in a pretentious way. It thinks it's smart, but really it's so surface level and every character is really bad at acting and conveying the message of the film anyway, and it's just really cringe. It reminded me of the Saw sequels. It had the same vibe as the Saw sequels, and I am not a fan of the Saw sequels because they're so pretentious. They think just because they have a twist, like I've got a twist. What a twist. Like just having a twist is not good enough. Just thinking that having a twist and making you scratch your head doesn't necessarily mean it's a good film. And that's what I feel like they thought they were doing here. It's like, well, because people will be wondering in this film, that makes it good. No, it doesn't. It has to be a good twist. You know, a lot of twists in the Saw franchise annoyed you after it. And Leatherface twist annoys you. Basically, you're kind of guessing who Leatherface is throughout the film. And it ends up, you know, things aren't as you expect. Things aren't what they seem. But it just, the payoff doesn't work. It doesn't go along with what we've already seen. And this movie feels completely alien to the rest of the franchise. Again, it's kind of writing out of existence everything else while still trying to have its cake and eat it and pretending it does exist. It's a really bad movie.
Mama, you get over there and hold on Commodity.
Why?
Because he ain't gonna like this much, that's why.
Now we're finally getting into some semi-decent Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, and this one is Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning. This movie follows the good 2003 remake and stays more or less on the right track. I would rather have a sequel than a prequel, but if you're going to do a prequel, this is probably the best way it could have turned out. This movie isn't like Leatherface. It doesn't try and be smart. It is a prequel, so it's answering questions which we didn't need. No one was wondering the origin of Leatherface, the origin of his family. But I found myself thinking, well, they're delivering it decently. So, you know, at least it's delivered in a way that's fairly engaging. You know, if I chose to be invested in Leatherface's backstory, this would be the movie that fulfills that urge, I guess. I'm still a bit put off because I don't really care, but at least the delivery is okay. No, it's scary, it's brutal, it's uncompromising. It keeps that visceral edge of the 2003 remake, and Leatherface is scary in this, guys. You know, he's not a joke. He's very uncompromising, he's very scary, and the fundamentals are there of Texas Chainsaw, and I respect that. Ali Ermey comes back from the remake as the sheriff, and he's very, very good again. You know, I feel like one thing that's good about this Texas Chainsaw 03 and then the follow-up prequel is they cast everyone really well. So every character, the performances are really good, you know, and everyone's effective. So it is quite an effective film. Again, I probably wouldn't choose to have made this. I'd probably Wouldn't watch this a lot. I'd watch the remake over this, but it's a decent little film. It's a decent little horror film. It doesn't wimp out. It gives you some gore, it gives you some grisly stuff, and it makes you think a little bit about Leatherface's origin. You know, it's answering questions you don't care about, but at least it's answering them in an okay way with a little bit of intrigue.
Sick.
And next up is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 3. Now this is a little bit of a controversial one in the series. A lot of people like it, a lot of people hate it. I thought it was okay. This film was censored to hell, you know, it got ripped apart by censors, and it does hurt it because there is a hopeless, enclosed, horrible feeling to this film. It is the closest to the first film, bar the remake, out of the sequels, so that I have to respect out of it. But there's moments in this where you're expecting that payoff of blood, of guts, of gore, and there's not much blood, guts and gore, and it feels like the movie is designed to be that, but obviously it got hacked to pieces, you know, no pun intended, chainsawed to pieces, so there's not much gore. So while it is a grim, morbid, horrible film, there's no payoff gore wise. And even though the first Texas Chainsaw doesn't have much gore, when you're doing the sequels, you kind of expect gore. You're never going to get that lightning in the bottle of the first film where you don't need gore. So it's just moments where Leatherface is killing people and there's no gore, and you're like, it feels out of place, it feels odd, and it gives the film this generic blandness. Ken Foray from Dawn of the Dead is in this, and it's a great performance. You know, you get behind the guy. And Texas Chainsaw is a franchise probably not known for its characters, but Ken Foray stands out in Texas Chainsaw 3. He's a great horror movie actor, isn't he? He always has a good performance. He's always convincing, he's always believable, he's always sympathetic, he's always badass. Ken Foray versus Leatherface. What more do you want?
Come on.
So of course there's new actors playing the Sawyer family in this. Who the hell are the Sawyer family? I'm serious here. How big is their family tree? Because every film they have different members. In this, you know, it's now a mother, and it's different family, and there's a little girl in this. The little girl the idea is disturbing. And there's a little girl in this who's going around with a doll, you know, in a pink dress, looking like an innocent little girl. But she's part of this family. I always feel like in this series, when Texas Chainsaw is good, it presents the family as thinking what they're doing is normal. That's really disturbing. And it is disturbing in this. That's a really horrible scene where she's getting trained to do all this terrible stuff and she's enjoying it and the family's enjoying it. It's like, that's proper horror. Even though it's not a wildly inventive movie, it's very generic, very bland, because they can't really get much gore, but I respect the effort here. There's clearly effort going on. It's not a throwaway film because you can see some little things, and I like watching the film, I do. But it just could have benefited from some gore and just being a little less bland, a little bit more excitement. But Ken Foray is good, Leatherface is good. Most of the film is pretty watchable. So I actually quite enjoy Texas Chainsaw 3.
Now for what we came. My brother here is tired of what's-her-name's face, and he wants a new one. It just happens to be he wants this face right here.
Yeah, next on the list is one of the nuttiest films ever made. In any franchise, in any genre, ever. Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation is round the twist. It is bonkers. It is bananas. It is completely chaos on screen. It really, really is. You know, and I hated this film growing up. A lot of people hate the film to this day. But rewatching it for this ranking, I respect how batshit it is. Because it's just, that's the intention. You know, and at this point, when you're doing franchises, why not just go all out mental? And they do. And, you know, and it's creatively insane as well. You never know where this is going. It's one of the most unpredictable horror movies ever made, and I have to respect it for that. Obviously, Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey are here in early performances. And you know what? They're quite good. Matthew McConaughey is really giving it his best Nick Cage mental performance. And it's entertaining as hell, and actually quite disturbing. People forget this entire movie isn't all a joke. There's stuff that Matthew McConaughey's doing in here. It's really wrong. and disturbing and horrifying. It's just a bat-shit camp fruitcake performance. Renée Zellweger, you know what? You see a star coming through in this early performance. She's pretty darn good in this. And of course she has that great moments where she stands up to Leatherface, which is an example of how silly and mental this movie is.
You sit the fuck down and shut up.
But the weird thing is about Leatherface, you don't necessarily have to take him seriously in this. It's more about how messed up he is, how weird he is. You know, moments in this film, he comes in different masks, in different get-ups, in different split personalities. And that was disturbing enough for me. You know, he doesn't have to be this hulking beast and horrifying all the time. Just his mental illness and just the way he presents himself can be just as disturbing or just as wrong or just as off-kilter. There's like an Illuminati subplot in this, the Illuminati's involved. It's just they keep throwing this crazy stuff at you, but it's watchable. You can't turn away. Like, there's this creative energy to this film. There really is. In a series where you basically have permission to go nuts, you can't really condemn Texas Chainsaw 4 for going nuts. It's not very scary, but it keeps you on the edge of your seat and it keeps you watching, and it's a fascinating little snapshot of 90s cinema, you know, with those early performances of those actors. I enjoyed this film and I wasn't expecting to, so what can you say? Texas Chainsaw 4, crazy, nutty, but pretty entertaining.
No. You're going the wrong way. Stop, you're going the wrong way!
Next up is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003. One of the best remakes of all time, in my opinion, and what an unexpected triumph this film was. I feel like the strength of this is it kind of takes the fundamentals of the first film, but also knows that you can't really capture that lightning in a bottle. So what it does is it basically takes the bleakness, the hopelessness, the morbid grisliness of that film, and gives it this polished kind of modern horror edge to it, but it zeroes in on kind of visceral, horrible griminess. I feel like everything looks dirty and horrible. There's this like yellow tint to this film. Everything looks like it's mouldy and horrible, you know, so they focus in on that. Leatherface is terrifying in this. He might be the most imposing Leatherface of the entire series. He might be. He looks scary, the mask is scary, the whole presentation of it is scary, and he just comes at you. Ali Ermey also gives a standout performance where he probably dwarfs the sheriff from Texas Chainsaw 1 and 2. That's how good this performance is. It's so seedy and horrible and mean.
Take the gun. Take the gun and show me. Take the goddamn gun!
It kind of takes a different take on the family. It doesn't recreate the dinner scene like a lot of the franchises do. It doesn't create that famous dinner scene. It takes different dimensions to the family, shows them in different ways, shows the sheriff in different ways. Jessica Alba is pretty likeable in this. I think she's quite a good lead. I really sympathised. I felt her emotional scenes were good. I rooted for her. I think her chases with Leatherface were really, really heart-pumping. And the moments where she finds her friends hung up and strung and bleeding in this horrible basement, there's just always moments of horrible discoveries for her. And she delivers with the performance. She really, really does. And, you know, there's a chase in a meat factory. You know, it's just always this kind of imposing feeling of meat and humans as meat. You know, it basically takes the first film and ups the ante with the gore. That's what you want to do if you're going to remake Texas Chainsaw. You stay true, but you bring the gore. I think it's paced well. I think it has a good chases. I feel like it has a good delivery. And it was watchable from start to finish. And that's a real achievement in modern horror remakes.
I wanna buy some radio ad time.
Are you fucking crazy? We are closed.
So we're now into the top 2, and number 2 is in fact Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. It's the first movie dipped into 80s cheese, 80s vibes, 80s flair, 80s colour palette. Everything is so 80s about this film, and I love that. You know, it's got this Lost Boys edge, it's got this Fright Night edge. It also captures the approach of those films. It's basically a comedy horror film. But I feel like people have unfairly looked at Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 over the years and like, oh, it's not serious anymore. But like, there was lots of horror movies in the 80s that were comedy horrors, but they were still horror. Tobie Hooper didn't want to make the same film again or attempt to make the same film again because he couldn't do it. So he completely elevated the material and went a different direction and took this kind of black humour approach. And it's still somewhat disturbing, this film. It's still somewhat scary. It has got some of the most morbid and horrible scenes in the franchise, so it doesn't really wimp out. It's probably more brutal than the first film. I think early on, one of the scenes that really captures what this movie is about is the radio station scene, where this member of Leatherface's family shows up and is just invading this female radio DJ space and just asking her weird questions, speaking in a weird way, and you're kind of laughing, but you're also uneasy. And there's this real kind of 80s mood to the scene. There's like lights and colour palettes and the way he's lit. And I just really like the aesthetic of this scene, and I did find it edge of your seat. And you know, while he's laughable, while he's kind of acting like Beetlejuice, this character, there is this underlying sense of you don't know what's going to happen. You're worried for the character. And then Leatherface bursts out and it turns into quite a scary scene. But it's completely bonkers. It's completely nutty. It's completely crazy. And I like that. You know, it's entertaining. It's really entertaining, this film. It's not boring.
Hey, maybe I could get a copy. And you could autograph it to, far out fan. Hey, what's in here?
Record vault.
Oh, where you keep the golden oldies and maybe the new music's in.
You know, like I said, there are some really disturbing scenes, such as when Leatherface takes this lady back to their lair, which is now underground, which is hilarious. They've now moved underground. That's how the Sawyer family stay secret, and it's all lit up with lights and its passageways and tunnels. It looks great, this layer. But there's this horrible moment where Leatherface forces her to wear the face mask of one of his victims, and then he like dances with her, and that's really messed up to me. That's, if anything, stands up with anything in the franchise. That's creepy. That's scary. That's horrible. That's disgusting. You know, in a movie that's remembered as a bit of a joke, that's horrifying. So we need to remember there's moments which are just as scary. Of course, Dennis Hopper is in this film. Dennis bloody Hopper. Enough said. Dennis Hopper is the main guy in this film. He basically is a policeman whose family members have been killed over the years by the Sawyer family. He's in search of the Sawyer family, and he's badass. It's Dennis Hopper taking on the Sawyer family. Dennis Hopper taking on Leatherface. And it makes the film stand out, because usually you have a teenage lead. Usually you have teenagers. You know, there is that lady from the radio station. She's quite a likeable character. She's in this as well. She's in peril a lot. But it's a different take on a lead. You know, I like when we have a different lead than what we normally would in this sort of film. Dennis Hopper is, of course, a charismatic actor. And, you know, there's just moments of him just chewing the scenery. Like when he goes into a shop, buys a chainsaw, and then goes out and just starts chopping like a badass. It's like, what a nutter. And you're like, yes, I want to see Dennis Hopper take on his family with a chainsaw. I'm invested.
Boys, you never should have been doing this.
I think this movie's a blast. I think it has such energy. And the dinner scene in this is just as scary as any dinner scene in the franchise. Obviously, it can't approach the original film, but it's disturbing. It is disturbing. You know, if you remember this film as a complete joke, watch it again. There are some scary moments, there really are. Texas Chainsaw 2 is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
We were just having fun. You think this is a party?
Please.
And number 1 on the list is of course Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. How could it be otherwise? This movie still fascinates me to this day, still blows my mind to this day. It's one of the most genuine depictions of a nightmare ever on film. Now I love the rawness, the grit, the horribleness, but the best thing about Texas Chainsaw is that it's flawed. Because by being flawed, it adds credence to the rawness, it adds credence to the DIY nature of the film. If this was completely incredibly well made in all ways, it would take away from the spontaneity of everything, the unpredictability. This is one of the most unpredictable films ever. You know, I try and put myself in the position of watching it in the cinema in 1974. Bloody hell. All kicks off. Leatherface appears, the family appears, cause chaos, and then that's it. Over. Black screen. It must have given people nightmares for weeks. It must have traumatized people. To this day, it scares me. So back then, to just see the film go blank at the end, and just end, and just go, deal with it, bitch. Torturing his actors on set, making them do that dinner scene over and over again in boiling hot temperatures, and you know, getting the performance, and everyone was having a bad time on set. Like, it all comes through. There's nothing nice about this film. It's not a pleasant watch, but that is horror. It's not supposed to be pleasant. So when horror is uncompromising, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre for me. Memorable visuals in the film that just become ingrained in your mind. Like the dinner scene, of course, the chase through the woods. Your heart is in your mouth, but it's just, there's no music. There's barely any music. It just is. This film just is what it is. It's enough. Leatherface is enough just being there. That horrific presence now. Character you've never seen anything like before. Just in your face. That's enough. We don't need jump scares. We don't need music. We don't need anything. That just is what it is. And, you know, the scene where she escapes at the end and she's on the back of the truck, and she's crying and laughing at the same time, covered in blood. That is so iconic for me, and so crazy. You think of, you know, you make you think of, imagine if you went through this experience, you know, and she conveys how you'd feel at the end of this experience. Then Leatherface is spinning around like a complete maniac with the chainsaw. That visual, it will never leave anyone's mind once it's been seen. That is horror cinema royalty, that scene, you know, and he probably stumbled across it. What I love about, you know, a lot of the greatness in cinema is stumbled across in a spontaneous fashion. Guaranteed Tobie Hooper wasn't sitting there going, this scene, this shot's gonna be remembered forever. But, you know, through just letting it be what it is, it became remembered forever. What is your ranking of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies? You know what? It's a mixed bag of a franchise. I enjoyed more of them than I thought I would, so that's a positive. Let me know if there's any other horror franchises or any other franchises you'd like me to rank. Please subscribe if you're a movie geek just like me. Check out my review of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 on the screen now. And I will see you guys in the next video.